Picture the sky turning the color of bruised iron. The wind goes silent, like the world is holding its breath. And then something huge rises out of the earth. Not a god, not a hero, a living disaster. Typhon so massive and monstrous that in some versions of the myth, even the gods scatter in panic. Mountains shake, seas boil. The idea of order itself feels like it's about to be torn in half. And standing in the middle of that coming storm is Zeus. Not just a guy with lightning, not a cosmic celebrity, but the ruler of a system. Because if Zeus loses here, it's not simply a battle you lose, it's the world. So today, in the Temple of Tales, we're not doing the shallow version of Zeus. Not the meme, not the scandal headline. We're asking the real question. Why Zeus? What makes him king? And what does he actually rule? If you had to sum Zeus up in a single line, it's this. Zeus is the force that turns chaos into a world you can live in. He's the guarantor of the rules that hold gods and humans together. Law, oaths, hospitality, justice, kingship, and yes, storms. But here's the twist. The Zeus we meet in myths is often morally messy, sometimes generous, sometimes terrifying, sometimes wise, sometimes petty. That's not an accident. That's the point. Because in Greek myth, power doesn't mean pure goodness. Power means the ability to maintain order in a universe that wants to fall apart. And Zeus isn't just a character, he's the throne itself. Before Zeus is king, he's a problem. His father, Cronus, has been warned. One of his children will overthrow him. So Cronus does what paranoid rulers do in myths. He tries to erase the future. He swallows his children. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, gone into the dark. But Zeus's mother, Rhea, refuses to accept that fate. She hides the infant Zeus and gives Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth instead. Cronus swallows the stone, thinking the threat is gone. And Zeus grows up hidden, raised in secret, protected by mythic caretakers, the kind of childhood that creates one thing above all else: a survivor. When Zeus comes of age, he doesn't ask nicely. He returns and forces Cronus to release the swallowed gods. Now imagine that moment. The old regime literally vomiting up the future it tried to erase. And then comes the war that remakes reality. The Titanomachy. Gods against titans. A cosmic civil war. Zeus doesn't inherit a throne. He takes it by winning a war against the previous order of the universe. And that matters, because Zeus's kingship isn't a birthright. It's a victory, and therefore something he must constantly hold. Now let's clear up the most common misunderstanding. Zeus is not just the god of lightning. Lightning is his signature, yes, like a crown. But what it represents is much larger. Zeus rules the sky, which in ancient thinking isn't just weather. The sky is the visible symbol of authority. It sees everything, it reaches everywhere, and it can strike without warning. But Zeus's deeper power is social and moral. He rules. Oaths, promises sworn in public, sealed with the fear of divine punishment. Justice, not always gentle, not always fair in the modern sense, but a force that punishes violations of order. Hospitality, the sacred rules of host and guest. Supplication, the protection owed to the vulnerable who beg at altars or clasp the knees of the powerful. If you lived in the ancient Greek world, Zeus wasn't only the god you feared in storms. He was the god you feared when you lied, betrayed, or violated sacred bonds. Because Zeus is what turns society into something more than a pack of wolves. And that leads perfectly into our first-time booster, because Zeus doesn't appear as only one version of himself. One of the fastest ways to understand Zeus is to realize this. People didn't worship Zeus as one flat, single personality. They worship Zeus through titles, epithets, each one focusing on a different aspect of his authority. You might call on Zeus Xenios, Zeus of hospitality, protector of guests and strangers. That means if you abuse a traveler at your door, you're not just being rude, you're risking divine wrath. Or Zeus Xenios, Zeus of oaths, enforcer of sworn promises. You can trick a person, you can cheat a rival. But if you swear and break it, that's Zeus's territory. There's Zeus Xenios, Zeus of the household, guardian of property and domestic stability. So Zeus becomes the answer to multiple fears. Will I be safe in a stranger's home? Will justice punish the liar? Will order remain tomorrow? This is why Zeus feels so huge in Greek myth. He's not simply a storm god. He's the god of the invisible social glue. Now here's something a lot of people miss. Olympus is not peaceful heaven. Olympus is a royal court. A family of immortals with enormous egos, overlapping powers, and complicated grudges. Zeus rules them, but not because they all politely agree. He rules because he's strongest, and because he's the one most capable of keeping the whole divine system from collapsing into endless war. He divides the cosmos with his brothers. Poseidon receives the sea. Hades receives the underworld. And Zeus takes the sky, the most visible symbol of authority. But authority has a price. A king has to manage rivals. A king has to maintain alliances. A king has to survive the resentment of other powerful beings who remember that rule can change hands. Zeus isn't just fighting monsters. He's holding a throne in a world where thrones are never safe. So let's look at a few famous Zeus myths, not as gossip, but as windows into what Zeus represents. 1. Prometheus, power versus rebellion. Prometheus tricks Zeus and steals fire for humanity, an act that isn't just theft, but rebellion. Fire means technology, cooking, metalwork, civilization. It's the spark that makes humans harder to control. And Zeus responds with punishment, Prometheus chained, an eagle devouring his liver over and over. Brutal? Yes. But mythically, it tells you something essential. Zeus is the force that limits dangerous power. He protects a cosmic hierarchy. In Greek myth, progress isn't always celebrated. Sometimes it's treated like a fire you can't unlight. Zeus isn't the god of freedom. He's the god of boundaries. 2. Medes and Athena, kingship anxiety. Then there's the strange, unsettling story of Medes, wisdom personified. Zeus learns a prophecy. Medes will bear a child greater than the father. That's the same kind of prophecy that doomed Cronus. So Zeus does something chillingly strategic. He swallows Medes. And later, Athena is born from Zeus's head, fully armed, brilliant, and powerful. Symbolically, it's as if Zeus absorbs wisdom so it can't become a rival power outside him. He turns a threat into an extension of his rule. If you want to see Zeus as a ruler, this is it. He does not merely fight enemies. He prevents them from existing. 3. The flood of Deucalion, resetting a corrupt world. And finally, a myth that makes Zeus feel almost like a cosmic judge. Humanity becomes corrupt, violent, lawless, so Zeus floods the world. Only Deucalion and Pyrrha survive, and they rebuild humanity. This story isn't about Zeus being nice. It's about Zeus being the final authority who can wipe the slate clean when order fails completely. And whether you interpret that as justice or tyranny depends on how you read the myth, which is exactly why Zeus remains fascinating. He is the power that can fix the world, and the power that can destroy it. Now we have to address the topic everyone knows Zeus for, his many affairs. And here's the key. In myth, Zeus's relationships aren't only romance. They're often story machinery. Greek myths use Zeus's unions, sometimes consensual, sometimes coercive in troubling ways, to explain three big things. 1. The birth of heroes. Many famous heroes are connected to Zeus. That divine ancestry isn't just bragging. It's a way to explain why a human is extraordinary. A hero isn't just talented. A hero is part of the divine system. 2. The founding of cities and bloodlines. Royal families and city-states often traced their origins back to Zeus. It's political myth-making. Our line is legitimate because it comes from the king of the gods. 3. Zeus crossing boundaries. Zeus transforms into a bull, a swan, a shower of gold, because myths exaggerate what power means. Zeus is the god who can cross any boundary, human and divine, nature and society, sky and earth. Now, this doesn't mean every story is comfortable or admirable. Some Zeus myths reflect ancient power dynamics in ways that modern audiences rightly find disturbing. But if you reduce it to "lol Zeus cheats," you miss what the myths are doing. They're showing a king god whose reach is everywhere, whose influence creates lineages, alliances, consequences. In other words, even the scandal stories are often about sovereignty. Here's another important shift. The Zeus in mythology is dramatic, theatrical, larger than life. But the Zeus of worship, of temples and prayers, was deeply practical. People called on Zeus for protection of the household, fairness in disputes, good weather and harvest timing, safe travel and proper hospitality, punishment of liars and oath breakers. Zeus wasn't just entertainment. He was a spiritual authority that shaped how people understood law and morality. And in that sense, Zeus is less like a comic book character and more like an institution. Which brings us neatly to our final time booster, because Zeus didn't stay only Greek. When Rome rises and absorbs Greek culture, Zeus becomes closely associated with Jupiter. They overlap heavily: sky god, thunder, king of the gods. But the emphasis shifts. Greek Zeus often feels like a royal figure in a divine family drama, a ruler balancing cosmic order and personal flaws. Roman Jupiter becomes even more strongly tied to the state, law, authority, military success, and the stability of Rome itself. It's the same thunder in the sky, but the meaning leans more official, more imperial. And that's a reminder that myths aren't static. Gods evolve as societies change. Zeus isn't just one thing. He's a mirror of what a culture believes power must be. So what is Zeus, really? He's the storm that punishes, the oath that binds, the law that watches, the authority that holds the world together. And he's also the uncomfortable truth that power, especially ancient power, can be complicated, inconsistent, and morally messy. Zeus isn't beloved because he's perfect. Zeus is feared and revered because he represents something ancient humans knew very well. Order is not automatic. Civilization is not guaranteed. And chaos is always waiting at the edge of the sky. So the next time you hear Zeus, god of lightning, remember, the lightning is just the signature. The real Zeus is the throne. And in the next tale, we can follow that throne into the divine court. Because if Zeus is the king, then Hera isn't just his wife. She's a power in her own right, and the politics of Olympus get even sharper from there. If you enjoyed this journey into myth, drop a like, subscribe to the Temple of Tales, and tell me in the comments. Which Zeus myth should we cover next? Typhon, Prometheus, or something even darker? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tale.